is very different to the Inteleon in Zach's deck. And we've got Solgaleo and Lunala in Diego's deck, which we don't see very much at all. So let's head on over into the game then. So far, we've had that perfect symmetry of the tournament so far. So with Shadow Rider Calyrex winning last game, it should be winning this game as well, because all the decks are mirroring their partners so far.
That seems to be the case. We'll see if Henry has anything to say about it as we are getting into the first game here of the best of three. Both players starting off with a mulligan by the looks of things, and we will be kicking things off from Henry's side. And he does not have the best of hands, doesn't have any quick ball or communication to get an early Ice Rider down. So he's going to need some help from top decks, I think.
Absolutely. It's not a bad hand, but it's not a good hand going first. If you're going second, you've potentially got the Sobble attack to get some more Pokemon. You've got Marnie to draw some cards. It's not perfect, but there's a lot to work with. Going first, you've got Level Ball for a Sobble, and that's it. That's like your entire... And you can attach an energy if you want, but Keep Calling is a decent attack turn 2 going first. It's not a very good attack... turn 2 going second. It's not a good attack turn 2 going first. That's when you really want to be starting to swing with your Ice Rider Calyrex. So going first, generally good, but with this hand, I'd have rather gone second.
Yeah, we've actually seen a lot of awkward turn ones from exactly the Ice Rider variants. Both of our Ice Rider players, we've just seen Zach unfortunately bow out, but neither of them are playing the likes of Crobat, the likes of Dedenne, and these really offset the fact that you can't play a supporter turn 1 and they draw you a bunch of cards to actually get those early basics down, and not playing those outs. And, you know, Henry's only playing 1 communication for Quick Ball. It really does end up punishing you in a lot of games, as we're seeing here.
It really does, and we see Diego's not got a supporter in his opening hand, but he does have a Quick Ball. There is an excellent chance that Quick Ball's going to turn into a Dedenne in a moment to start drawing a bunch of cards. And there's a good reason to not play. For anyone that's wondering, look at the benches of these Ice Rider decks. You want many Inteleon out. It's not so much about the space in your deck. You can find the space in your deck, but it's about the fact that you need that bench space for Inteleon and for your Ice Rider. You can't afford to be having 2 or 3 of these support Pokemon on the bench. So you build your deck in a different way, and when it works, it is a thing of absolute beauty, but it doesn't always work.
That is the letdown. And Diego has that awkward situation where he'd love to just hold a hand like this and have Incense plus the Shadow Rider Calyrex, but you do leave yourself open to Path of the Peak, and you've only seen Sobble and Water Energy so far. I think oftentimes you would expect Path of the Peak to be in the Ice Rider variant, so he may be happy holding this hand, but it does open up the path to actually really hurt him. He's not to know that this is actually not going to go... It's not going to be a problem for him at all. It's not going to be punished, as Henry does pick up a Drizzile, so actually can go ahead and finally find something like Quick Ball and maybe force Tamani, although Henry didn't see any supporter played from Diego, and he's almost fainting a bad hand, Diego. He really didn't do much. He just found a second Ice Rider and an energy drop and poked for 10. Oh, actually, the Shadow Mist stops Path of the Peak coming down. I should definitely mention that. So Diego's actually safe from Path, so he's not actually taking any risk here. And yeah, Henry's got an interesting choice whether or not he wants to research or still play Amani, despite Diego not doing much.
I know, and that's awkward, because a lot of the time when you say, and again, we are playing closed deck lists here, that is very important, it's different to the other player cups. We don't know how, the players don't know what each other's playing. But when you see your opponent have a turn like Diego just had, when you are allowed to play supporters, it generally makes you go, oh, they've got a terrible hand, there is no way I'm playing Marnie. But sometimes, like you say, Diego's hand is actually really strong. It's just pretending to be a bad hand.
So Henry is actually going to retreat to play Melanie. As we see, he doesn't want to use Bimani if he can help it. Now, we could be seeing a scoop up net into Articuno here. It's a really interesting one-of that he plays in his deck, and it also resets an extra Shady Dealing, so he can go for Capacious Bucket even here, which is really nice for him. But Articuno prevents Diego from using supporter cards on your benched water Pokemon, which is all of Henry's deck, basically, apart from a Mew and a Cobalion, which he plays. So Henry is not afraid of any boss's order shenanigans here. He's just going to throw that one prizer into the active and sit behind it while he builds up his own VMAXs.
I like that a lot. And of course, if there's 2 VMAXs coming out, you don't care if you give up a single prize Pokemon, because you lose the Articuno, you lose a VMAX, you've got 2 prizes left to give up, and Diego's got a KO of VMAX anyway, so it's really good card. It was quite popular for a while. It kind of completely fell out of the metagame. It's making a bit of a comeback now, and I'm happy to see it. Diego gets 2 Shadow Rider Calyrex down, and now we see the quick ball for the Dedenne, and you're just looking for Psychic Energy here. You want to be activating that Underworld Door, getting energy on the field, drawing some cards. Oh, that's a nice hand.
Did you want Psychic Energy? That's pretty good. We're going to see some Underworld Doors coming down. Now he's really just looking for switch outs. And we do see Boss's Orders. That's not a useful card. It's not really a valid target because you just spend your supporter and do no effects. So we're still looking for those switch outs, really. And there we go. Ideal turn for Diego, who can at least initiate this prize race.
Yeah, this is nice. And we've said, KO the Articuno doesn't really help your prize map. It doesn't really get you any closer to winning the game. But you've still got to KO it, because what we've seen from these Ice Rider decks, especially the ones playing the Inteleon that deals the damage to your bench using its ability, is they love wasting time. Henry's playing Cobalion GX just to waste a turn to give extra uses of that Inteleon. So, I mean, if Diego wants to sit there and not KO the Articuno, Henry is absolutely cool with it. So Diego's basically got to waste an attack taking a pointless KO just so he can carry on playing the game.
Yeah, and he has an interesting decision here, mulling over what to go for with this Fog Crystal. There was a few definite decisions there. Either you're going for Alcremie and then looking to find your Ordinary Rods to get back your VMAX for potential big one-hit KOs like we saw Azul do in the previous round, or you can go ahead and protect yourself around Path of the Peak. Let's be clear, Diego doesn't know what's in Henry's deck list. It is closed, so we have to play around a card that's not even existing here, but it's the safest route for him right now.
Absolutely, and that's interesting, of course, because then you see the game changing in games 2 and 3. If Diego plays this game and doesn't see any Path to the Peak come down and a lot of cards are drawn, he's going to start thinking, oh, it's not that variant, and that is going to completely change the way he plays next game. He's not going to be going after that Mars Shadow, and it's going to open up a lot of options. He's spending resources at the moment, playing around a card that isn't there. Henry has got the VMAX with a 2 energy and an Inteleon and a Drizzile. It's a decent start.
Yeah, I think you're pretty happy to attach to the active and then fire off the Marnie. You're looking for your backup V Pokemon here. I don't think you can comfortably go for a boss. So we are just going to see the Marnie come down, refresh both players' hands. There is no backup Calyrex V or any way to get it, unfortunately, for him. But you're not really in danger of a huge KO here because there's no Alcremie in sight. And Diego doesn't quite have enough Psychic Energy yet to do anything super scary. So we are just going to see the first quick shooting come down into the active position. And I imagine we'll be seeing a Max Lance here for 250 damage.
Absolutely, and the dream here, like I made the point a couple of games ago, generally speaking, VMAXs don't one-hit KO each other. There are exceptions, but the general rule is they're playing a 2-hit KO game. But we see that Alcremie VMAX can kind of change it, and that's what Inteleon does for these Ice Rider decks. I'm only hitting 250, but give me a couple turns to get some Inteleon rolling, and I can make up the difference. And that's definitely what Henry's going to be going for here. His dream is to KO that Shadow Rider Calyrex now, just using Inteleon. Diego is still setting up a really nice board, though. This is going well for Diego.
Yeah, Henry actually put down the sneaky Mew. I imagine that's what he'll be using next turn. You can attach to Mew and just research the hand away, and then you can go Inteleon, quick shooting, and then just do the 3 damage counters with the Mew. So he set himself up to take a 3-prize knockout. And like you said, with these 1 prizes, it doesn't actually help Diego's prize map at all. So even though he didn't find the Ice Rider, Henry's got a nice turn mapped out. Diego right now is getting a lot of energy established, but I do think he needs to start finding his Alcremie, because you do want to work towards a secondary 1-hit KO, and pretty much seeing the writing on the wall for your active Shadow Rider, you know that a lot of energy will be stripped away from you next turn.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Alcremie, if I'm playing these Shadow Rider Calyrex decks, especially against a VMAX opponent, I'm always thinking about Alcremie here, because you need to have that big 1-hit KO potential. Most of the time in the early game, there's a bit of a back and forth. You can afford that 2-hit KO, and then the Alcremie comes in, takes a big 1-hit KO, and that's the difference in the game. And we've seen a bunch of these Shadow Rider decks so far in this tournament, and frankly, Alcremie has made a big, big difference to who's winning and who's losing.
Yeah, it's really just buying a turn, right? There are those games where you can reach 11 energy and it's all breezy with Max Geist, but it doesn't happen all too often. People will target down your Shadow Riders because, you know, it's your engine as well as your attacker, and it takes a bunch of energy off the board. There's no reason to not target down the Shadow Riders unless your prize map goes a different way. So I think Diego with double Ordinary Rod can be fairly comfortable committing to this Alcremie here. He has already discarded his VMAX, but he has a couple ways to get it back, and still has Underworld Door and potentially his supporter to play. He may be looking a different route here, though. Gonna grab the Gengar and Mimikyu, which is a very fragile Pokemon. This makes me a little bit nervous, because there's already a very damaged 3-prizer in play. So going down the Horror House route just gives Henry an extra turn of quick shooting, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it actually does really help his prize map. This is a huge risk from Diego.
Absolutely. Now I'm just looking at, I'm not, in theory, like best case scenario, we see quick shooting this turn and then double quick shooting next turn.
Yeah.
That's actually 10 damage away from a KO, because the ideal situation is you quick shoot into KO the Shadow Rider and then you attack the Mimikyu and Gengar, and then that's it. That's the 6 prizes. That's the game. But I think being 10 damage away is actually going to be really, really important. That essentially gives Diego one more turn to win the game. And Diego's pretty good at this game, so if he thinks that extra turn is going to be relevant, I'm inclined to believe him.
But is he considering Iron Rule? That could be the extra turn that Henry is going to try and buy for extra quick shootings. Both players are going down a similar route here, damage-wise, as Henry can't play any cards, but he is still able to use his ability here. Just plonks 20 onto that heavily damaged Shadow Rider. That does set up the Mew play as well, so if nothing else, he can go ahead and play Mew and then research. Alternatively, he could just try and use the Iron Rule next turn and have one more Inteleon ping, maybe even digging towards that second one. So yeah, both players are actually sort of starting to build up a web here and trying to set the opponent back, as Diego is basically just trying to get to that threshold where he can take a big one-hit KO. We're at 10 energy in play, so he needs one more to take a knockout here cleanly.
Yeah, it's a lot to ask for, but like you say, with his Underworld Door, it's absolutely possible. We don't have the Alcremie down at the moment. Like you say, we went for the Gengar and Mimikyu, so maybe it is, maybe the game plan is, you know what, I can win with just Max Geist. But we know that there is a clock. There is now a free prize Pokemon on the field that Henry can KO super cleanly using, that Max Lance attack, and it's not going to be long before that Shadow Rider Calyrex is just KO'd from quick shooting. But then again, maybe Cabalion's a wild card. Maybe that's the turn it needs. And I am willing to bet Diego will not be expecting Cabalion GX in this deck.
Yeah, that is going to be a really sneaky way that Henry can take that win. We've also seen Natalie, the other Oceania player in the tournament, has done the exact same thing to great effect, where your opponent feels like they're safe, but then that extra turn out of nowhere comes in and you really can't do anything about it. It just allows those additional quick shootings to get you over the line. I think that's what Henry's banking on here. Diego is going to try and thin an extra card out of his deck. He may just be thinking a little bit about decking out at this point, but I think with a second Ornery Rod, you don't have to be concerned. You have to hit your last energy here to get a big one-hit KO. So I feel like you have to sacrifice the Solgaleo Lunana at this stage. You probably just play out your last Air Balloon and fire off the Professor's Research and dig for that last Psychic Energy.
Yeah,
the other route is just bosses ordering up the quick shooting Inteleon. But it does allow Henry to keep his Ice Rider around for an extra turn. So there is still that risk. And keeping an Ice Rider around whilst also being able to Mew for 3 prizes is a really, really dangerous prospect, because a lot of Psychic Energy exit the field.
Yeah, I love how Henry's played this game. I love the way he's setting up these prizes. And I think you can really see the difference here between Henry's list and Zach's. If Henry was playing a list like Zach's here, you wouldn't have those cheeky KOs on the board. It would be a much more difficult proposition. And actually, so worried about that Inteleon is Diego that we do see the boss's orders. Considered going after the Drizzile, but instead just goes after that Inteleon, gets the KO, and still 2 KOs away from winning the game, Diego. So that's not helped his prize map beautifully, but just really doesn't want Henry getting that ridiculous KO just using quick shooting. Could we even see Henry take a KO with Mew, and then Diego KOs a Mew, and then has to take out the VMAX? Because that is the long way round if ever I've heard it.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that the best play for Henry is just going for the Mew here. He's then able to establish a research, maybe get a second Ice Rider into play. So there's no doubt about that it feels like a great option for him. Henry is going to put down the Cobalion as well, simply because he will be researching here. He's going to grab a Water Energy. It's always going on to this Mew, and we can see a big research for 7 additional cards here. Diego couldn't take the risk last turn. He couldn't dig into his deck. There was a 30% that his last Psychic Energy would have not been drawn, and then he really would have been stuck. So he had to play the boss's orders here. Henry doesn't draw into his next quick shooting Inteleon. It's not a huge deal, and he may even keep the Drizzle open just for the 1 copy of Shady Dealings that he has. But the Psi Power here has been set up perfectly. He can sprinkle with Psi Power 3 counters onto the heavily damaged Shadow Rider. You take 3 energy out of the pool. You take away an Underworld door as well. So this is a really good position for Henry at this stage.
It's such a good position for Henry. I mean, you don't often see KOs with Mew. I did those little videos in Players Cup 4. We were spotlighting some cards. And one of the videos we did was about Mew. And, you know, I'm talking about the bench barrier ability and how good it is against Rapid Strike, Urshifu, etc. But actually, that Psi Power attack gets a weirdly large number of KOs. It is one that you cannot look over. And weirdly enough, it even bypasses an opponent's Mew because it's dropping damage counters rather than doing damage. So, you know, there's no way Henry played Mew for the, hey, I'm dropping the free damage counters. Played it to protect the bench. But he knows how good it can be. I love it when Mew comes out like that.
And what do you go for here as Diego? Do you have to pick off the Drizzle or the Sobble here, trying to shut down Shady Dealings as being an easy win condition for Henry? Are you concerned about Iron Rule? It's something that your eyes kind of widen as soon as it hits the board and you think, oh, that's part of his plan apparently, yikes. But yeah, we are going to see the Sobble come up. I think this is correct. It's the most outs that you can take away from Henry. But there's no hand disruption here, so there's no doubt that Henry can piece together the easy 3-prize knockout on the Gengar and Mimikyu here. He's already holding on to boss's orders. He already has energy. No shenanigans needed. This is going to be a nice 1-0 from Henry here. And he got it in a fairly interesting fashion, having to weave in the Mew to take a knockout of all things.
It wasn't what we expected, but we are going to see the KO from the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX onto that weak Mimikyu and Gengar. That is going to be the KO. They're having a bit of a chat about who's going first next game, but now we see the KO, and Henry will take a 1-0 lead in the series. And there was that pivotal turn where Diego could have gone for the Horror House or could have gone for the Alcremie. In the end, went for the Horror House, and that did leave those easy prizes on the board. But then again, at the time, it bought him a turn, which was really impactful. And once again, we've got Shadow Rider versus Ice Rider, and we've got a pretty tense game that goes kind of down to the wire. That a couple little things either way, and Diego could have won that match or that game.
Yeah, I think missing a Psychic Energy in those final turns meant that he couldn't deal with the only Ice Rider VMAX in play, which is a huge downside for him. It's why he played towards the Horror House in the first place. He just wanted to have enough energy around to take the one-hit KO, but his hand just didn't get him there, unfortunately. So yeah, it was a risk, but it didn't pay off for him, unfortunately. And Henry didn't even have the most ideal draws there. He only really had like 1 or 2 Drizzle to work with the entire game, but still got the job done with that one Ice Rider, really doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Absolutely, and certainly it always helps when you can take a free prize KO with Mew. So let's head on down to game 2 then and see if Mew is going to be impactful again, or whether Henry's going to take a more traditional route to victory.
Yeah, we'll certainly see. I think the turn 1s are really important for both of these sorts of decks, especially when there is Horror House in the mix. Henry has to be aware of that and try and get double Ice Rider developed if at all possible. Diego, it's down to him. Well, his start is fantastic. You're looking for your early basics, and wow, he's actually sat on a monster, I think, here. You actually have an Embarrassment of Riches. I think you have to quick ball away one of these Evolution Incense and just grab double Shadow Rider here. Or you could go Shadow Rider plus Gengar Mimikyu. It is that downside because it only has 240 hit points, and now he knows all too well that Henry can punish that quickly with the Max Lance. So he is going to go through, look through his prize cards, but I think you have to be happy with the amount of ball search that you've landed on here.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you've got 2 Fog Crystal, 2 Evolution Incense, and a Quick Ball in your opening hand, and you've got your ideal starter, you know, there's no starting to Dene here. Plus, you've got your Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX in hand. I mean, this is that rare turn 1 hand where you can play something like a Dedenne, and you're like, nah, No way I'm playing that Dedenne. Because you've got in hand, you've got the attachment for the turn, and in hand, you've got double turn 2 Shadow Rider Calyrex ready to go. I mean, what more do you need? Like you say, you're probably going to end up getting rid of one of those Evolution Incense next turn, because if you don't top deck an energy for Underworld Door or Supporter, something along those lines, you're going to need that Dedenne for draw.
Yeah, and Diego teetering on the safe side of that Marshadow. I think even after that first game, because Henry was sort of coming up with a plan on the fly, you still can't expect there to be no path. Whereas Henry, he has very little, once again. His opening is very poor. He's forced simply to Psi Power, and there's an easy route for Diego to take a knockout here. He does actually boss his orders up the Shadow Rider with 1 energy. It forces an extra VMAX, but we know that that's pretty much all Diego has right now, so it's not going to be a problem for him. He can thin his deck that little bit and work towards a 1-hit KO. There's a couple different ways he can fashion it, but looking most likely to try and max Geist with his benched Shadow Rider VMAX.
Yeah, free Psychic Energy and a switching card is really what he's going for here. So you're probably going to just see the double evolution here. Evolution Incense is pretty much a useless card, unfortunately, so it's going to be quick ball away. Either of those, it really doesn't matter. Go and grab the Dedenne, get yourself a new hand. Remembering, of course, even after using Dedenne for 6, you won't have played your supporter for the turn, so there's absolutely still a supporter on board there. And you need the free energy and the switch, but bearing in mind 2 of those energy are going to be attached with Underworld Door, which are going to draw you 2 cards at the same time. And I love this play from Diego. I'm going to Evolution Incense a card I don't want. It is what we were saying earlier, that tiny little extra chance of drawing what you need, and that's a good start.
Yep, he's got 2 Psychic Energy that allows him to draw an additional 4 cards. And then you can go ahead and rip the Research. So 11 cards essentially to find exactly an energy attachment for turn and a switch out. That's not a lot to ask for. We are seeing 3 Air Balloon and 2 switches in Diego's list, so a lot of good outs here.
Yeah, this is going really, really nicely. Actually chooses to use Fog Crystal for a Mimikyu and Gengar, and actually is not going for the donk here. And we've drawn another energy, so that actually would be just a switch away from potentially a win. Diego's gone slightly off script here, at least a script that we were writing.
Well, why not Horror House and just say, Henry, pass, and then I'll get you next turn. I'll draw another like 10 cards and get myself there.
That's just me.
Yeah, I think this is completely fair. Yeah, it means that he doesn't need to hit anything from the Research. Essentially, you can just manually retreat and GX, and then Henry's basically toast.
Yeah, I do love, of course, that Horror House GX. We've talked about it a lot. It stops your opponent playing any cards next turn. And when all you've got on board is a Mew with an energy. And look, Mew was great last game, but actually did have all of the pieces to get the KO this turn. Really not necessary. We're just going to see a switch. We're going to see Horror House GX. And there is absolutely no way whatsoever Diego doesn't win next turn.
Yep, he's got just retreat attached KO.
Yeah.
It's there. It's on board. We've leveled it all up. It's 1 apiece.
I kind of like the Horror House GX. It's less exciting in a way because you're not getting that kind of, he's digging for the switch, he's hit the switch. It's more of a, I'm just going to take an extra turn and like guarantee it. And it's actually the better, the safer, the smarter play. So Diego does take out that Mew with far more damage than is necessary, more than 3 times as much as is needed, and evens it up at 1 game apiece. I don't think Henry can feel even remotely bad about that game. His deck did not cooperate.
His deck's done it a few times. That's why he's found himself in the loser's bracket, unfortunately. His deck just has not cooperated with a number of his hands. Even the game he won in the game 1 of this series, it was kind of cobbled together. It's not really been that neat and tidy, so we'll have to see if going first can change that and he can actually get the Ice Rider into play early game, because that's something that he's missed a few times now.
Yeah, it really is necessary. And the thing is, like, when Henry's deck sets up, it's beautiful. When you've got those Max Lances firing off big damage, Melanie to reset, Inteleon's quick shooting to spread damage around the field, taking multiple prizes and mid-turn KOs, it's wonderful. But we've seen it really from Ice Rider so far. Those Ice Rider decks are not cooperating as well as they could. But Henry is not out of the tournament yet, so let's head on down into Game 3 and see which of these players is going to be moving on through the losers bracket and who is going to become the 4th player to unfortunately be eliminated from the tournament.
Yeah, so it looks like we will most likely be starting with Henry. I'd be surprised if not, because going first is hugely advantageous. Fortunately, it's a mulligan from Henry. He doesn't want to see a hand like this. You want to find your Ice Rider and your turn attachments. That's kind of the priority here. And also looking for some sobbles. This is looking a little bit awkward as well. No energy, no Ice Rider. He's going to need some help from top decks here.
Yeah, he really is. And, Diego won that last game just purely by virtue of, you know what, you haven't got anything, I'm good. Henry's not getting an Ice Rider turn 1. He can go like many Sobble, which is lovely. He can, go treble Sobble, and that's not terrible, but he's going to need something. The good news is he has got a Drizzile to find himself a supporter next turn, which is nice. But there really is not very much going on. And, Diego's going to be looking at this thinking, well, hang on a second. It's game 3. You've gone first. You don't have an Ice Rider down. I am liking this start from you.
Yeah, and once again, Diego can be pretty content here. He may just be doing another Shadow Mist play where you just search out a second Shadow Rider. You have them both nicely in your hand. So just a turn 1 attachment and poke for 10 is pretty safe here. I'm happy to see that Evolution Incense go. It's not doing too much. So I think just second Shadow Rider and start doing your little 10 poke is actually pretty valid.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. It's quite nice how it's set up. And, we keep talking about these opening hands. I mean, Diego for the second game in a row is looking at an opening hand, which is going to give a nice turn 2 double Shadow Rider Calyrex. Well, what more do you really want? It's your engine, it's your energy attachments, it's your draws, it's your main attacker, and sure, there's plenty of other tricks in the deck, but you ask most Shadow Rider players, hey, how do you feel about, you've not got much else, but turn 2 double Shadow Rider Calyrex, and you got your attachment, but Diego's actually getting a little greedier, going, no, you know what, I want more than that, and it's still not a bad hand.
Yeah, he's actually pretty okay with this. It's one of those surprising things where just guaranteeing is such a nice feeling to have for next turn, but he is playing 4 copies and 3 Evolution Incense, so he always has decent outs. And I think this is the way that he becomes more aggressive. He wanted to develop the Marshadow and actually wants to keep the Air Balloon in the active. So in theory, it's actually higher odds of getting the attack off rather than needing to find additional switch outs. But it's one of those things where we know how weak Henry's hand was. Diego wasn't to know that. Of course, Henry couldn't play a supporter going first, so the money doesn't look as bad as it does with Caster Vision, but it's just working out that way. And Diego looks to be piecing together a Dedenne here just to continue to dig through his deck.
Yeah, I'm still liking Diego's play here. I'm still liking what he's got. And like you say, the Marnie, if you're looking at the board and you can't see Henry's hand, it absolutely looked like a good idea. Now, Henry must feel good about that. His hand is a million times better than it was pre-Marnie. He's got everything he needs there. He's got an energy to attach. He's got a Pokemon communication and an Inteleon to get an Ice Rider. And then he's got that level ball to go and get himself a Drizzile, to get himself whatever he feels like. It's still not that turn 2 Ice Rider VMAX attack you want, but it's not bad at all.
Yeah, I think the best route here is going for level ball and communication just for double Drizzile, because you still really want to build up towards your Inteleon. They're still a really massive part of your deck in terms of your damage output into other VMAX archetypes. And I think you go for Capacious Bucket and Quick Ball. That then gives you the activation of discard for the Melanie play here. And Quick Ball, of course, gets you the Ice Rider. So I imagine that's what we'll see. You can always Quick Ball away the water and Melanie first, and then save the communication for whatever you need after that.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. That's a pretty sensible plan indeed. The most important thing is that Henry has got a way to get the Ice Rider. He's got a way to get the energy on. And he's just going to be starting to set up. We've seen how good Henry's deck can be. We've also seen how bad Henry's deck can be. We've seen how badly it can draw. And it's not just Henry's deck. It's Ice Rider decks. And we've said why. You're not playing those things like Dedenne. If you can just get through the first couple of turns, things start looking so much different.
Yeah, and I think Henry it's really tempting to go Drizzile here. And then you also find another communication potential. Oh no, he only plays 1 copy of communication, but I think getting double Ice Rider and an attachment on each is really tempting. You could also pay retreat into Articuno, and this is another way that you can protect your Ice Rider and once again give up the 1 prize that really doesn't change much in terms of the race.
No, and it's kind of like Gabalion. It's just, I need a turn. And we keep talking about the fact that these Ice Riders, when they set up, they're so gosh darn good, but it's hard to set them up sometimes. Buy a turn with Articuno, maybe you buy a turn with Cobalion later. I like what Henry's doing, really trying to give himself the best chance to win this game and this match. Diego, however, his deck has been running well this series so far. He's drawn himself a couple more cards of Underworld Door, he's got energy to attach for the turn. He's not got a huge amount else after this unless he plays the Marnie. So that might have to be the case. Could just retreat and attack, but I think you probably want to play the Marnie here. Keep rolling, try and get another VMAX, maybe even another V to evolve in the future, because Diego's deck is running pretty nicely, so why not keep trying?
Yeah, and that additional Evo Incense now means that he can actually reach a KO with Max Geist, because he needed the extra Underworld Door to actually push him over with the higher hit points that the Articuno has. 110, so you need that fourth energy rattling around in there somewhere. There's a couple Fog Crystals for him, so he's got guaranteed Underworld Doors for next turn as well. The Alchemy is such a good card to put into play, but timing it is still really important here. Yep. Oftentimes you'll go for the 2-hit KO on the first Ice Rider and then a big 1-hit KO on the last one. So if you weave in the Alchemy too early, you can get a little bit punished by that, and it shuts off your options. So we may see him hold it and simply Underworld Door once he's retreated to the bench onto his own Shadow Rider here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've just said. I really want to bench the Alchemy and I want to attach the energy to it. But the problem is you want it for that big surprise KO near the end of the game. And if you bench it now super early in the game and attach an energy, you know Henry is going to be waiting. And if there is an opportunity to take it out of a boss's orders, Henry's going to take it. And the Alchemy's too important. So it's that awkward thing of it's the right play, but it's the wrong time. So we just see, we do see it being benched, but without the energy, which makes it a less attractive target.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of the best of both worlds, where you're threatening the 1-hit KO, but there's nothing committed onto it. So if Henry wants to go after the 2-prizer, it's not as beneficial, and it means that you keep your energy around regardless. Henry, though, he can promote his Ice Rider, and he is able to get the Melanie extra attachment. He already has a backup Ice Rider, which is looking pretty nice, and he has the option to level ball for Drizzle here to actually grab his Evolution Incense. So not too bad for at least this turn. I think the only thing that you're a little bit worried about is after this turn, you don't actually have much going for you. It may be another quick ball Mew scenario, where he's trying to do the 250 and then start quick shooting into the active, because, hey, it worked the first game. Why not try it and run it back all over again?
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We do see the level coming down for the Drizzle, and that Sword and Shield Drizzle is actually being really good here. The Inteleon is played because that quick shooting ability is great. It's a great ability. But having that stage 1 that you can weave in there as well to get yourself extra trainers while you're building up to the Pokemon you actually want, it's just so good. And it's from 5 sets earlier, but actually it just makes that combo so well. And the players all saw it when it came out, but it just gives such a even better reason to play the Inteleon than we had before. So I think you're right here, Joe. We do see the evolution on the active. We do still need to see where that quick shooting damage is going to be going. And there is a quick ball that can be played. But what are you even looking for from the quick ball here?
I think it might be Mew, I actually think it might. The other thing you could do is reload your Articuno and simply quick ball away your Ice Rider and turn attach to Articuno over 2 turns. That's another way that you can make a 2-hit KO happen, and then you only give up a 1-prizer, which doesn't change the race too much. The awkward thing is what you do with a hand, because you need to top deck if you're going the Articuno route. If you just get rid of the Ordinary Rod and you play towards Mew, you don't need to give up any of those painful cards. It's going to be Cobalion by the looks of things.
Does look like it. Of course, if you do give up a single prize Pokemon, that means that Diego can, he'll still need 2 KOs to win.
Here we go.
It's going to be Mew.
It's Mew. I think it's correct as well.
I love it. I love seeing Mew come in as an attacker. Diego's not playing to hit the bench here, but Henry's like, you know what? I still love my Mew. But if 2 single prizes go down, then Diego can go, I'm only carrying 1 VMAX. You've got single prizes I can then boss off the bench. So 1 single prizer going down doesn't really make a difference. It's 2 VMAXs or 3 KOs, but I think when 2 single prizes go down, that does actually start to change things quite a bit.
Yeah, the one fear there is that Henry kept his Ornery Rod rather than holding on to a water, and I think that might really hurt him because he is in top deck mode, there's no doubt about that. So we'll see how Diego wants to play out his turn. Maybe there's some reprieve from Armani or something like that, because I think Diego wants to go through the active. Once again, he could target down the quick shooting Inteleon. That also is a really good option for him this turn.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Like you say, there's a very good chance that Diego is going to be taking out 3 single prizes in order to finish out this game. And actually, I kind of like that. I like the idea of taking out that quick shooting Inteleon. If something like a Mew comes down, you can get an easy KO or maybe use another boss in the future. And then that Alcremie comes in with that big attack late game. And, that could be a nice route to victory for Diego. Just kind of ignore trying to take out the VMAXs until you've got that Alcremie ready to go. Of course, then Henry can boss his orders and KO the Alcremie early, and there's all kinds of things that can go wrong, but there's certainly a lot of things Diego can do here. And like you say, are we going through the active here, or are we going to use those boss's orders in hand to start picking apart the bench? Does Diego have an inkling that Henry's hand might be as bad as it is?
Yeah, I think Henry did everything he wanted, realistically, and there's really good arguments for him to not have put down an Ice Rider V last turn, so you can't really expect him to have whiffed it, and he actually didn't whiff it. He chose not to play it because it gives Diego an easier path, which is Gust the 2-prizer, then Alcremie the VMAX. So it's really smart of Henry to not put it down this turn. Diego is thinking about the Max Geist here, and is just going to throw it all onto the active, and Henry really needs a top deck now.
He does. What is it? It is
quick shooting
Inteleon, which is not terrible because, you've got an extra quick shooting ability, but it is kind of terrible with the hand Henry's got. It's nice to have that second quick shooting Inteleon, and actually over the next 2 turns, that would get a KO, but actually, I mean, what... You can't.
It's actually one of the better top... Yeah, it's one of the better top decks. I think you're meant to put down Ice Rider this turn. Oh, he actually doesn't. It's a close one. It does make... Diego's map that little bit easier, but with the ordinary rod, you could potentially still cobble together Articuno and try and buy another turn just with a 1-prizer in the active. But yeah, it's getting rough at this stage. I mean, it was one of the better draws, but still not ideal for him, as Diego's going to start powering up this Alcremie to the max by the looks of things. He could be just spreading his energy as well. It's also super reasonable. He only needs 1 manual attachment, and he's already holding Fog Crystal if need be, as he's just going to cycle through his deck here. He still has a decent number of cards remaining in there. And yeah, he's really getting to that promised land of a super high energy count. And he also finds his last Shadow Rider VMAX. Again, I'm not certain what his best route is here because he didn't boss his orders last turn. So I think you're just going through the active here and just saying, you know what, Henry, you can't use any other 2 prizes for the remainder of the game. You've got to try and make it happen with just Inteleon, Mew, and like a turn of Cobalion.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love going through the active here because now that single prize KO that Diego took actually becomes super relevant. You take out this Pokemon, and like you say, that Ice Rider V maybe should have come down last turn, because now if Henry ever benches a 2-prize Pokemon, Diego's like, boss, KO, yay, 6 prizes. So it's either cutting Henry out of Ice Rider Calyrex for the rest of the game, or making Henry go, hope you don't have boss's orders, and look at Diego's hand, and look at the amount of Shadow Rider that are on the bench. He's gonna have boss's orders.
Let's see, is there a good draw here? No, it's just another quick shooting Inteleon. So we're hoping that 3 prizes here gets Henry out of this funk. It's going to be a really big 3 draws here for Henry to actually see if he can get anything working. A Shady Dealings is huge here. And Quick Ball. He's going to try and work towards a Cobalion, no doubt here. And Henry's not actually out of this game. With some additional quick shootings going around, you can actually piece together a KO. Diego has to put forward something that isn't a 3-prizer, I'm pretty sure here. Because that's one way that Henry can, attach this turn to a non-Ice Rider, then you can force a Melanie play. Bringing forward an Air Balloon target means you can actually retreat out of it later, I guess. But I think you're meant to Iron Rule here.
Yeah.
Possibly next turn you Iron Rule. You could just use 1 more turn off and just Psi Power and ping a couple of times and then Iron Rule. But I feel like the attachment game, you have to get the Cobalion developed now.
No, I want to get the Cobalion. What I want to do here, I want to bench the Ice Rider, and then I want to Cobalion, because like I've said, if the Ice Rider goes down and gets boss, then that's game. But if the Ice Rider goes down and then use Iron Rule, then that Ice Rider is not getting KO'd. You can basically guarantee it. And then at that stage, you can actually get it into play. But this works as well. Articuno will also guarantee that boss's orders cannot take out an Ice Rider on the bench. So I kind of like this a lot, just giving yourself time to get the VMAX in play. And I think if I'm Diego, I'm now thinking, yeah, Alchemy's my route to victory.
Yeah, so here's the awkward thing. Henry quickballs before using the Ordinary Rod. So now he's going to actually like draw into this Articuno again. And he's also not getting back the other Inteleon. He just wants to have a lot of Ice Rider Vs. I think it makes the most sense to have more quick shooting available because it just extends your reach that little bit further. He'll certainly will be evolving into Shady Dealings. So I imagine this Ice Rider is coming back because we're just going to see a Drizzle Shady Dealings for Professor's Research, and he still will try to not put down any 2-prize this turn.
Yeah, if you're going to put down a 2-prizer this turn, you have got to have either Iron Rule GX or you've got to have Articuno. You're looking at Diego's hand, you know he's got Boss's Orders, you know he's got the KO, that will be game. The only way you can put down a 2-prize Pokemon is with either Articuno or an Iron Rule GX. It's an awkward one to navigate. So we do see Professor's Research. I'm assuming Henry has an Ice Rider left in the deck?
Yeah, he just reloaded it, but he's not been able to draw into it. Not been able to draw into Articuno either. So he's just going to try and Psi Power here and quick shooting down a Pokemon. But I'm not seeing where the last prizes come from because, you know, you're hoping that Diego just keeps his VMAX in the active or something like that. It's kind of hard to see where it's coming from at this stage.
Yeah, see, this is the problem. Now you're giving up a 1-prize Pokemon. So next turn, you're putting Articuno in the active. Nobody cares. Because Diego can just KO it and win the game. I mean, maybe next turn you Iron Rule and that gives you the turns you need to build up a VMAX. That could be a route, but it's starting to get really awkward for Henry here. I think we're going to have to see an Iron Rule next turn or else it's going to be game.
Yeah, I think at this stage, if he attaches to Drizzle, he can try and set up an Aqua Bullet on the Sword and Shield Inteleon, but he chooses still not to attach here. So he can always sacrifice this 1-prize. That's not the problem. I think the problem is where he goes from there next turn. And actually using Scoop Up Net denies him the option of triple quick shooting. Unless he may actually have not recovered it from the Ordinary Rod anyway. So that's not a huge deal. But he also didn't even manually attach to give himself a retreat option for next turn. He also needs to grab that at some point. Needs to get an air balloon.
Yeah, it's starting to look pretty bad for Henry here. There are still options. He's not completely out of it yet, but it is starting to look pretty dire. Diego, he's just doing his thing. He's got more Underworld doors, more energy going on, more cards being drawn. He's even got an Ordinary Rod to put some of that energy back into the deck for more Underworld doors in the future. He's got Alchemy ready to go. No VMAX yet, but again, that Ordinary Rod can definitely make that happen. We got a reset stamp down to 3, which is going to be kind of annoying, honestly, for Henry, not for Diego. And then we're just going to see a retreat into a fresh Shadow Rider Calyrex and a Boss's Orders onto... it's an awkward one because you want to get rid of the Quick Shooter, but you also want to get rid of the Sobble, which can be Shady Dealings, which can get you out of the reset stamp. So I think it has to be Sobble. Yeah, I think that's got to be the choice. It's just, using this giant attack on a free prize Pokemon with a Boss's Orders to take out a 60 HP Sobble. It just feels like you've done more than you should need to.
Yeah, and all 3 were good targets. There's benefits to all of them. I don't think Diego has actually seen a Shady Dealings Inteleon yet, so he's not to know that Drizzle can also evolve into Shady Dealings. But Diego puts himself 1 attack away. Basically, everything crumbles at this point from Henry's side of the board. Outside of an Iron Rule, I can't see a way that he can stop the damage coming in, but we do at least see the draw of we do have the Shady Dealings. He's drawn Boss's Orders as well. So we could get towards an Iron Rule turn here.
It's got to be an Iron Rule.
Or we can see Melanie Quick Ball. What are we trying to build towards?
I don't know, because Melanie only accelerates an energy to a Pokemon V. So Melanie's not going to get the energy onto Cobalion. It's one of the things I keep forgetting. I've made that mistake multiple times. Melanie is only onto Pokemon V, so you need to get the energy attachment. So you kind of, Capacious Bucket Quick Ball here. Get the Cobalion, get the energy, manually retreat the Mew, Iron Rule. But then the problem is, you Iron Rule, but what are you even working towards?
Yeah, it's not even a winning play because then you're just left with like 50 damage remaining. I think at this point, Henry's just saying, yep, I have no win condition, basically. He had to Melanie into the outs to Iron Rule. I think that's the only way he could win here. he had to use the Melanie to draw to actually set himself up to win next turn. But he basically had to find himself Quick Ball and then manually attach to Iron Rule, and that's your only route here. There's no way to like retreat or protect yourself at this point, and already the Max Geist is doing enough damage on pretty much everything.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. That was the one last chance for Henry here, was just to play that Melanie, get the energy onto the V, ready to evolve next turn, hope to get the Cobalion. It did not work. There's a Mew in the active, so all Diego is going to need to do here is just click that attack, do an absurd amount of damage onto that Mew, and Diego, he selects a Max Geist, does a whopping 560 damage to the Mew, and takes the match games to 1.
Yeah, great stuff from Diego there. Huge knockout at the end, and he actually was able to have some pretty plain sailing towards the end. There was the potential for a couple turns there where we could have seen Henry piece together some Iron Rule shenanigans and really bring something back out of nowhere, but the hand just wasn't working out for him. The research into none of those options really was that little bit awkward, and it left his board with only 1 prizes. Henry was dedicated to trying to make that prize map as awkward as possible and buy as many turns as he could, and that's really what the Ice Rider deck is built around. That's why you don't see the Eldegoss, the Dedenne, the Crobat, those sorts of cards, because you're trying to extend the game as long as possible. But even in that scenario, there wasn't enough damage around for any quick shooting prizes to come of it. So yeah, congratulations to Diego. He is going to be moving on to our losers semis.
Yeah, Henry made it as awkward as he possibly could for Diego, but at the end of the day, every time Henry did something, Diego was like, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm drawing so many cards and attaching so much energy, I'm pretty sure I can get out of it. And the deck symmetry is working beautifully. Both the Ice Riders just lost, both the Shadow Riders just won. This, however, is where we start picking them apart. We got losers semis, which is 2 Shadow Rider Calyrex, and winners finals, which is 2 Urshifu. So we are going to have to go on some divergent paths here. So let's go and take a little bit of a look